The massive human warship Valiant floated alone, facing the impossible might of 500,000 Vulcan ships bearing down, intent on wiping out both the Valiant and the worlds behind her. Randy Cooper sat in a grimy dive bar on Hermes 7 station, whiskey in hand, recalling that fateful day 30 years ago. The young bartender Jake gazed at the grizzled vet, entranced. "We were supposed to just patrol the Cygnus Rift," Randy began, voice grave. "Damn Vulcans had been posturing, but intel shit the bed. Didn't see this coming." He drained his glass, ice cubes clinking. The Valiant was top-notch, but one ship against a whole armada? Suicide. Those Vulcan fanatics wanted the resources on the other side, and we were the only speed bump. "Holy shit," Jake whispered. "What did you do?" Randy refilled his tumbler from the bottle. What could we do? We were outgunned, outmanned, and out of options. He turned, face lit by the neon bar sign. "But we were human. And if those alien bastards wanted the rift, they'd pay for every inch in blood." Randy closed his eyes, transported back to that moment. It was hopeless, we all knew it. But if the Valiant fell, those Vulcan scumbags would burn every human world beyond the rift. Billions dead. We couldn't let that happen. He clenched his fist, voice hardening. We were 200 humans against 500,000 warships. But by God, we'd make those odds even if it killed us. We'd show those Vulcans what humanity could do when pushed. Randy took another long pull of whiskey, the burn barely registering as he delved deeper into the memory. Jake leaned in, hanging on the old soldier's every word. "Those Vulcan bastards hit us with everything they had," Randy growled. "Plasma torpedoes, ion cannons, particle beams, you name it, they threw it at us. The void lit up like the goddamn 4th of July. He slammed his empty glass down on the bar. But they didn't count on one thing, the sheer grit and determination of the human spirit. Captain Hernandez, she was a tough broad, tougher than a $2 steak. She looked those odds dead in the eye and gave the order. All ahead full, charge the Vulcan line. The E. Randy barked a harsh laugh. You should have seen the look on that smug prick Vola's face when we came screaming out of the dark, guns blazing. The Vulcans scattered like roaches when you turn on the lights. They never saw it coming. His eyes took on a faraway look as he relived the chaos of the battle. The Valiant was like an avenging angel, weaving through the enemy ships, dealing death with every shot. Hernandez had the helm, dancing around plasma blasts, always keeping our strongest shields facing the enemy. We'd dart in, pound them with our rail cannons and torpedoes, then slip away before they could draw a bead on us. Randy's voice swelled with pride. We must have taken down 50 of those alien ships in the first 5 minutes alone. It was glorious, Jake. The Vulcans didn't know what hit 'em. But then his face darkened. Thing is, even with Hernandez's brilliant tactics, we were still just one ship against an armada. We were hurting them, but they were hurting us too. Consoles were exploding, bulkheads were buckling. We were fighting like hell, but we all knew we were on borrowed time. Randy poured another shot with a shaky hand. Sooner or later, the Vulcans were going to regroup, and then they'd bury us in sheer numbers. We needed a plan, and fast, or the Valiant was going to be nothing more than a cloud of glowing debris. Randy took another swig from his whiskey glass and leaned closer to Jake, his voice hushed. Things were looking grim, but then our chief engineer Alex Petrov came up with a Hail Mary. The man was a certified genius, always tinkering with the Valiant's systems, pushing them to the limit. He had this theory, see, that we could use the experimental warp drive to create an artificial gravity well, suck those Vulcan bastards in like a black hole and crush 'em. Randy shook his head. It was a crazy idea. That drive was never meant to be used like that. Hernandez knew the risks. If it didn't work, the Valiant would tear herself apart from the inside out. But what choice did we have? It was do or die. He closed his eyes, the memory still vivid. I remember the look on Alex's face as he primed the drive. The man was focused like I've never seen, even with the ship coming down around his ears. Sparks flying, the deck pitching beneath our feet, but his hands were steady on the controls. Randy's hand clenched around his glass. The Valiant, she was shaking fit to fly apart. You could feel it in your bones, this deep, unnatural vibration, consoles blowing out, crewmen being tossed around like rag dolls, but Alex, he just kept pushing, coaxing every last bit of power out of that drive. His voice dropped to a reverent whisper. And then it happened. This flash of light so bright it seared itself into your retinas. And there it was, the gravity well, a swirling maelstrom of warped space-time, right in the middle of the Vulcan fleet. Randy let out a harsh bark of laughter. Oh, it was glorious, Jake. Those alien ships, they didn't stand a chance. The well sucked them in like dust down a drain, crushing them into a ball of twisted metal. The few that managed to escape the vortex were easy pickings for our guns. He drained his glass and slammed it down on the bar. It was chaos, pure and simple. The Vulcans were in full rout, smashing into each other in their panic to get away. We'd done the impossible, and they knew it. Randy gulped down more whiskey, the burn giving him strength to relive that horrifying moment. There we were, staring down oblivion itself. That singularity was growing faster than we ever imagined. Alarms blaring, hull integrity warnings flashing. We could feel the Valiant straining against the pull, the entire ship groaning like a wounded beast. He gripped his glass tighter. But then, just when all hope seemed lost, Alex pulled another rabbit out of his hat. He'd been analyzing the bomb's energy signature, and he discovered a way to use the warp drive to create a counter-gravitational field, one that could repel the black hole and push us to safety. Randy shook his head in disbelief. It was a 1,000,000-to-1 shot. The slightest miscalculation and we'd be spaghetti. But Hernandez didn't hesitate. She gave the order, and Alex punched it. His voice dropped to a whisper. The Valiant shuddered like it was coming apart at the seams. Sparks showered from overloaded consoles. The lights flickered and died, plunging us into darkness. For a moment, the only sound was the agonized scream of overstressed metal. Randy paused, lost in the memory. Then, with a jolt that threw us all off our feet, the Valiant broke free. The black hole receded, the death grip on our hull easing. On the view screen we watched as it collapsed in on itself, taking the remains of the Vulcan armada with it. He paused, the memory of that moment etched into his soul. The black hole kept growing, Jake, sucking in everything around it like some insatiable beast. Hernandez knew we had to act fast. She barked the order. Divert all power to the engines. Get us the hell out of here. The Valiant's engines roared to life, the deck vibrating beneath their feet. Randy gripped the console, his knuckles white. It was like being inside a rattling tin can. The whole ship shook and groaned, bulkheads buckling, rivets popping. Felt like she was coming apart at the seams. Alarms blared, red lights flashing. The hull creaked and moaned, a haunting soundtrack to their desperate struggle. We poured everything we had into those engines. Every last scrap of power. It was our only chance. The view screen showed the black hole looming closer, a swirling maelstrom of destruction. The Valiant strained against its inexorable pull, the engines whining in protest. It was touch and go, Jake. Didn't think we were going to make it. That monster had us in its grip, and it wasn't letting go. But then, with a sudden lurch, the Valiant broke free. The engines thundered, propelling them away from the ravenous singularity. The crew erupted in cheers, embracing each other in sheer relief. We thought we'd done it, thought we'd won, but then we saw it. Randy's voice trailed off, his eyes distant. The black hole continued to expand, a voracious darkness swallowing the Vulcan ships, the debris of battle, and then, to their horror, the Cygnus Rift itself. Stars winked out, planets crumbled, the very fabric of space-time warping and twisting. It was like watching the end of the world, Jake. Everything we'd fought for, everything we'd sacrificed, gone, just like that. He shook his head, the weight of memory heavy on his shoulders. We'd beaten the Vulcans, but at what cost? The rift, the resources, the worlds, all consumed. And the Valiant, our proud ship, was a wreck, barely holding together. Randy's voice was somber, tinged with a pain that time couldn't erase. We limped back to Earth, hailed as heroes, but it was a hollow victory. The war was over, but so much had been lost. The true cost, Jake. That's something you carry with you. Always. He stood, draining the last dregs of whiskey from his glass. His eyes, once bright with the fire of battle, now held a haunted look, the look of a man who had stared into the abyss and seen it stare back. That's the truth of the Battle of Cygnus. Bravery, sacrifice, and the bitter taste of a victory that feels like defeat. War is hell, kid. No matter what side you're on, and sometimes even when you win, you lose. With those words, Randy turned and walked away, leaving Jake to contemplate the heavy price paid by those who fought in the stars. The ghosts of Cygnus, it seemed, would never truly be laid to rest. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.